It may only be March, but underdog drafts are in full swing, and I'm starting to realize there are going to be some players that I'm likely going to draft over and over again. These are my top 10 must-have players for 2024, at least until the NFL draft happens. Now, I did this list in January right after the fantasy football season ended, but I like to go back and revisit it after free agency and then again after the draft to see who I'm adding, who I'm taking off. So let's start with the 6 guys that I am keeping on, and then I'll talk about the 4 guys I'm taking off and who I'm replacing them with. The first player I'm absolutely keeping on is Amon-Ra St. Brown. I really think he has a chance to be the top scoring wide receiver in 2024. Last year he was 5th in targets, 3rd in red zone targets, 2nd in receptions, 3rd in yards, and 5th in total touchdowns among all wide receivers. And now he is entering year 4, which is usually the start of a wide receiver's prime, at least for elite wide receivers. This is when we see him make that major leap and kind of stay as the elite for many, many years. I think he does that this year in 2024. Kind of like CeeDee Lamb last year, who is used very similarly to Amon-Ra St. Brown and ended as the wide receiver 1 in his 4th year. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown has the ability to be the top scoring wide receiver in all of fantasy this year. So in the first round, if I don't get one of the first few picks, Amon-Ra St. Brown is the guy I want. And if I'm going running back early, I am more than happy with Jonathan Taylor as my RB1. Despite a down year where he was on the PUP list to start the season and then had a slow ramp up where he was splitting with Zach Moss and then got banged up again down the stretch, he still averaged over 15 points per game. He was the RB12 on a points per game basis. He was still very good last year. He's been very good every year of his career. I know 2 years ago when he was the number 1 overall pick, he had a down year, but look, he had an ankle injury that he was dealing with all year long that finally ended his season. We see running backs struggle with these ankle injuries. Now he's fully healthy, no injuries to worry about whatsoever. Zach Moss is in Cincinnati, so don't have to worry about that. And Shane Steichen, the head coach there, is a guy who's fine just using a workhorse running back. We saw Jonathan Taylor be an absolute workhorse down the stretch. We're going to see that in 2024, and people are going to remember that, oh yeah, there was a time when Jonathan Taylor was the number 1 fantasy pick, and there's a reason for that. I think he has a huge bounce back year in 2024, and people who are willing to take the gamble and draft him will reap the rewards of that. I also think Garrett Wilson will have a huge 2024, and I think we'll finally see the Garrett Wilson we've envisioned since he was drafted a couple years ago. Somehow, playing with some of the worst QB play in the entire NFL, he's still gone over 1,000 yards each of his first 2 seasons. Now, we got to bank on the fact that Aaron Rodgers will stay healthy. I mean, that's what comes down to a lot of these guys, right? We need the QB to stay healthy. We need them to stay healthy. We have to have the mindset that Aaron Rodgers will stay healthy, will play a full 17 games. And the Jets, although they did add Mike Williams in free agency, that doesn't worry me for Garrett Wilson at all. If anything, it probably helps Garrett Wilson because now the defenses actually have to worry about somebody else. And with a healthy Breece Hall and a healthy Aaron Rodgers, they might have to worry about the run game too. I think Garrett Wilson is poised to finally break out and have that huge season that we've all been waiting for. Why can't this year be the year? And I'll tell you right now, if you are doing underdog drafts or in my underdog drafts or even the mock drafts we do, when I have a pick at the end of the first round, that 1-2 turn, I love it if I can get a Garrett Wilson, Jonathan Taylor start. So be looking for that in your underdog drafts as well. And if you haven't tried Underdog yet and you want to get in some of these drafts I'm talking about, head on over to UnderdogFantasy.com. Use promo code ENDGAME when you sign up. They'll match your first deposit dollar for dollar up to $100. Get in some of their best ball drafts. Start drafting right now. Have fun all off season doing drafts. Now, while Garrett Wilson is still going pretty early in drafts, Chris Olave is definitely fallen. It seems like people have kind of forgotten about this guy because he got off to such a slow start last year. He wasn't amazing, but he still averaged 14.5 points per game. But when you look at the second half of the season, in the last 7 games, he had 16 or more points in 5 of those games. It looked like that connection with Derek Carr that really struggled early in the season came on down the stretch. They got the groove going. They looked better. Derek Carr looked better. Now they're going into a second year together, and really, who is he competing with for targets here? Michael Thomas is gone, not coming back. Rashid Shaheed, A.T. Perry, Taysom Hill. I don't even know. Who is he really competing with for targets here? Nobody. He's going to be a target monster. He's going to be one of the probably top 10 targeted wide receivers in the NFL. And with that connection with Derek Carr, we should see an even better Chris Olave. Maybe Derek Carr can't get the most out of Chris Olave, unfortunately, but now he's going in the 3rd round of drafts, where last year he was a 2nd rounder. I'll take that all day long. Again, going into year 3, a prime breakout year for wide receivers. Give me Chris Olave in the 3rd. And also give me Kyler Murray at the end of my drafts. If you're not getting one of the true elite QBs, and really, I mean, how many are there right now? Just wait and take Kyler Murray. He's currently being drafted as a QB 10 on Underdog, and in the mock drafts we've been doing, he's usually going as one of the last QBs off the board. Yet in the 5 years he's been in the NFL on a points per game basis, he's finished as a QB 11, the QB 3, the QB 4, the QB 7, and last year, even coming off ACL, the QB 10. He also, despite only playing 8 games, still had 244 rushing yards and 3 rushing touchdowns. And again, that was coming off ACL. Now he's going to be fully healthy off that ACL. We're going to see him run a ton. Should easily go over 500 yards. Could push for 800 rushing yards. 5+ rushing touchdowns. Maybe 8 rushing touchdowns. We've seen him do it before. And he's likely going to get Marvin Harrison Jr. or Malik Nabers in the NFL draft. An elite wide receiver. You got top 5 upside at the end of your drafts. So again, if you want to just wait on QB and punt, it seems like a great option when you can get an elite player like Kyler Murray late in your draft. And I still also can't believe that no matter what happens, Christian Kirk's ADP never seems to go up. I had Christian Kirk on this list even before Calvin Ridley went to the Titans. Christian Kirk, one of these wide receivers that to me is always a value every single year. You look at last year from weeks 1 to 7 before he got hurt in week 8, he was the wide receiver 15. But if you take out that fluky week 1 where he only had 1 catch, he was the wide receiver 11. And don't forget, in 2022, in this same offense, he was the wide receiver 14. So it's not like some small sample here where it's like, yeah, but it was a small sample. We don't know what would have happened. Well, he was great in 2022. He started last year great. Now Calvin Ridley is gone. All they've done is replace him with Gabe Davis, who, look, maybe Gabe Davis is a good real-life player, but he's not good in fantasy. He doesn't command a ton of targets. It's going to be Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram getting all the targets here, and he gets those juicy matchups out of the slot, those softer matchups. Christian Kirk, once again, is going to go undervalued, currently being drafted as a wide receiver 34, and he's going to be good again in fantasy just as long as he stays healthy, and people are going to not care once again. I don't understand why. Give me all the Christian Kirk at this price. Those are the 6 guys I had on the list in January. Here are the 4 guys I'm taking off and the 4 I'm putting in. Starting with Anthony Richardson, I'm taking him off the list. Not that I don't like Anthony Richardson. I love Anthony Richardson. I think he's going to be great. But he's going very early in fantasy drafts. He's being drafted like an elite QB. So although I still like him, I don't feel like he's a must-have. And I'm going to replace him with a running back who I can't believe is going where he's going. It's not very often that the running back 4 from the previous year, who's not coming off an injury, who's in the exact same situation, who's still young, sees a big drop in their value. But that's what we're seeing with Rachaad White. For some reason, Rachaad White going late 4th, early 5th round of drafts, being drafted as the RB12 right now. Look, is he going to have another top 5 season? Maybe not. But is he going to be worse than the RB12 if he stays healthy? Almost certainly not. He's going to catch a ton of passes. He's going to get all the work here. He's got touchdown upside. They brought Baker Mayfield back. And even though Todd Bowles was talking like, yeah, we want to, add some running backs to take the pressure off him, all they've done so far is re-sign Chase Edmonds, who barely touched the ball last year. I really doubt they're going to draft one of the few running backs in this draft class that can take significant work away from him. He's going to be a workhorse again. He's going to catch a ton of passes. No, he might not be the most efficient guy, but he wasn't the most efficient guy last year either. It doesn't matter. That volume is going to pay off, and he's going to easily finish as a top 12 running back again if he stays healthy. Now, a running back I did like before free agency was Tyjae Spears, but Tony Pollard ruined that. So let's go with Deontay Johnson, who signed with the Panthers, and I feel like this is going very under the radar because, well, it's the Panthers. I get it. It's not an exciting offense. It wasn't good for fantasy last year, but look, Adam Thielen, who is pretty dusty, was doing quite well to start the season last year. Deontay Johnson is an elite separator at the NFL level. He can run all the routes. Even though he was stuck with Kenny Pickett in Pittsburgh, we've seen him have the upside back with Ben Roethlisberger when he had a real QB. Now, will Bryce Young be a real QB? That remains to be seen, but they did bring in Dave Canales, the guy who just revived Baker Mayfield, so if anybody can do it, he can do it. But even if Bryce Young doesn't make the leap, if Dave Canales cannot get the most out of him, Deontay Johnson is going to get so many targets in this offense, like we saw with Adam Thielen in the first half of last year where he was just getting peppered with targets. We're going to see that with Deontay Johnson, but unlike the second half where they're like, let's stop throwing to this 34-year-old wide receiver or whatever he is, they're going to keep throwing to Deontay Johnson because he's good and he's young and he's talented. So Diontae Johnson on volume alone should be a monster in fantasy. And he's still going as the wide receiver 43 on underdog drafts, barely inside the top 80 players. That is absolutely absurd. Grab Diontae Johnson in your drafts, please. He's going to be like your wide receiver 4 or 5, and he's going to have the upside to be way, way more than that. Now, I also had De'Von Achane on my first top 10 must-have list, and even though the Dolphins haven't done anything significant at running back, I've kind of backed off of this because, look, Raheem Mostert is still there. They have re-signed Jeff Wilson, Salvon Ahmed. I just don't know if De'Von Achane has the upside I'm looking for in this offense where he's not going to get a workhorse role. Yes, he's going to have some huge weeks because we know this guy at any moment can rip off a 50, 60, 70-yard touchdown. But he's also going to have many weeks where you're kind of probably wishing you didn't start him. So I'm going to take him off the list. I'm going to throw in a tight end here, and that is Jake Ferguson. Jake Ferguson is a tight end I find myself drafting over and over when I wait on tight end because for some reason, he's going as a tight end 11, even though he was the tight end 9 last season. He also led all tight ends in red zone targets. Not only that, he was third among all players in red zone targets last year, tied with Amon-Ra St. Brown and some others. And Jerry Jones and the Cowboys, despite being all in this year, have done almost nothing in free agency. In fact, they might have done less than nothing in free agency because their starting running back is gone, and Michael Gallup, their, I guess, number 3 wide receiver, is also gone. There is a path here for Jake Ferguson to once again get a ton of targets, a ton of opportunity. They're going to run back the same offense, the same coaching staff. Jake Ferguson now entering year 4, which for tight ends is a really good year for them. This is the year where they kind of start to figure it out and make that leap. I think we see it with Jake Ferguson this year. He has touchdown upside every single week. And again, going as a tight end 11, you can just wait on tight end, get Jake Ferguson, set and forget with tons of upside. And then the final player I had on this list before was DJ Moore, but now with Keenan Allen signing there in free agency, I've got to take him off. It's not that I'm out on DJ Moore. I just don't feel like he's a must-have guy anymore. Like, yeah, if he's there late enough, sure, I'll take him, but must-have, not quite. Let's go with a rookie running back instead because rookie running backs are getting no love right now. Trey Benson is the rookie running back I'm drafting over and over again. This guy is 216 pounds and ran a 4.39 40. To put that in perspective for you, Jahmyr Gibbs, who weighed 199 pounds, ran a 4.36. Bijan Robinson, who also weighed 216 pounds, ran a 4.4. So he's got the size and the speed to hit those home runs. He also averaged well over 6 yards per carry in college, which is a very good marker. It's what we want to see. And he also was one of the best running backs in terms of forcing missed tackles in all of college last year. Not to mention, he's also a fantastic pass catcher. Oh, and by the way, he graded as one of the best pass blocking running backs, so you don't have to worry about him coming off the field on third down. Is he perfect? No, definitely not. But can he be a fantasy stud, a fantasy RB1 if he lands in the right spot? Absolutely, and he's currently going outside the top 100 picks. If you're doing best ball drafts like me, this is the time to get as much exposure to him as you possibly can before a team like the Cowboys or the Chargers draft him and suddenly he's going inside the top 50. That's my updated top 10 post free agency, but if you want to see the impact free agency had on some big time players, check out this video right here.